You know guys, leg training holds a very special place in my heart. So when I saw that Daddy Noel had a whole long form video dedicated to it, I knew that I had to check it out. So I hope that you guys enjoy this review, and most importantly of all, I hope that you're able to take something useful away from it for your own training. What's up guys, Enkiri here, and today we're going to review Noel Deyzel's leg training advice, or as I was told in the last video that I made on him, his name is actually pronounced Noel Deyzel, I think is what the commenter told me. I don't really know, so I'm going to stick with Noel Deyzel for right now, and maybe Noel himself can chime in and let us know how you pronounce his name properly so that we can all get it right from here on out. But anyway, today we're going to review his leg training advice, and if you've been watching my channel in recent history, then you know that a couple weeks ago was actually when I discovered Noel's channel, and that was when Philion and the Pimple of Truth made a video kind of bashing him and bashing his training advice, or bashing his come up, whatever you want to look at it as. But so when I was reviewing Noel's channel to make that video specifically, I discovered that pretty much every single video on his channel is like 30 seconds or even less than that, except for just a small handful of them. A small handful of his videos are actually longer form videos, and one of those longer form videos is his advice on leg training for beginners. And you guys know that leg training holds a special place in my heart. So when I saw that video, I knew that I had to sit down, I had to watch it, and I figured I might as well give it a review, right? And see how his advice holds up compared to somebody like me who kind of comes from most likely a different school of thought as it pertains to weight training. And Noel's got over 1 million subs now, right? He's marketing this advice though specifically to beginners, and he's an advanced and enhanced bodybuilder. He admits to all that, but his audience is most likely not. They're not enhanced, and they're probably not advanced either. And so it is a potentially precarious sort of situation here, right? Where it's something that you run into often in this industry, where you've got these big, jacked dudes who've been running gear for a long time. And because of that, many of them have lost touch with what it's like to train without the assistance that you get from PEDs, performance enhancing drugs. And that often shows itself very obviously in the form of dubious advice that's wholly unhelpful for the vast majority of beginner and natural trainees. And that's another phenomenon that I've talked about on my channel here, where the advice that these enhanced lifters give really does not apply to you as a natural trainee. And I detailed 3 major red flags that are a dead giveaway of this. But so what I want to do today is review Noel's leg training advice and see if he falls victim to any of these red flags or not. So let's just jump right into it.
By warming up. As most of us know, warming up can help prevent injury. It's a mental and physical preparation for a good workout ahead. I like to split my warm-up into 3 parts: cardio, dynamic stretching, and weights.
A 3-pronged warm-up approach, similar to what I use, similar to what I recommend as well. So far, so good.
Put on a bicycle and cycle for around 5 to 10 minutes. This doesn't only allow for blood flow, but also preparation of the nervous system. Start out at a moderate pace for about 5 to 10 minutes. And if you feel you need to, up the intensity for the last minute.
This is also good. When I was still working out in commercial gyms, this was actually how I began all my lower body workouts. I would spend a few minutes on the bike. It's a great, easy, and low-cost way to get some blood flowing into the legs and to help limber up the hips and the knees a little bit. I don't have access to a bike anymore now that I work out in my garage, but now I'll just do a nice, easy 400-meter jog down the street instead to kick things off. And I do think that the bike is actually a preferable way to prep for squatting specifically, but you make do with what you have available. As well, something like a few minutes of jumping jacks done at a low to moderate intensity and kind of ramping up that intensity a little bit as you get warmer would also be a good option here.
I find that dynamic stretching works better for my workouts. Dynamic or active stretching is movement-based stretching. We often see runners and sportsmen doing this. Just after my bicycle, I'll do 5 to 10 minutes of dynamic stretching before my workout. So instead of chatting to your mate, rather do some dynamic stretches whilst you wait for your pre-workout to kick in.
Now this is great advice. I find dynamic stretching to be a much better way of prepping the lower body joints for activity as compared to static stretching, especially where performance is concerned. Like if you're planning to run or jump or perform an explosive activity like an Olympic lift maybe, or do a heavy leg workout, heavy leg work such as squats. Static stretching I would typically reserve for post-workout or for some other time during the day, like whenever the hell you have time to squeeze it in. But it can also be used in the warm-up routine if there's a specific mobility deficit that needs to be targeted, but that would need to be determined on a case-by-case basis. Dynamic stretching, however, has not only been shown to actually improve performance, unlike static stretching, which can impede performance. Dynamic stretching improves performance, it increases power output, and it also specifically preps the joints for smooth movement, smooth and easy movement into and out of end range positions. And a good general routine for this purpose, for dynamic movement, is Joe DeFranco's Agile 8, which incorporates a variety of dynamic stretches for the hips, the knees, and the ankles, as well as a little bit of targeted foam rolling on common problem areas, and static stretching for the hip flexors specifically, which that is one muscle group that can almost always benefit from being stretched statically on a daily basis, simply because of how much time that most of us spend sitting squarely on our asses.
Now for the weights. Generally, what I suggest is doing 3 to 4 sets of compound movements. In our case, we will use a squat. Use a comfortable weight and aim for around 15 to 20 reps.
Now here's the only part where I disagree with Noel so far. Once you've completed the general warm-up here, you've done the movement component of the warm-up, and then you've done the dynamic stretching that follows that, and then you move on to your first exercise that you'll be training that day. In this case, he's using the squat as the example here. So that's all good, that's fine. However, it sounds like he's recommending using 3 to 4 sets of 15 to 20 reps on the squat as the final component of your warm-up, and that is quite a bit excessive. I would never recommend anyone commence a squat session that way. Instead, what you should do is progressively increase the load on the bar while leaving multiple reps in reserve on each warm-up set that you do. So for example, just for example, if you're planning to squat, we'll say 3 sets of 10 reps with 225 pounds that day as your working sets for the session, for the training session. Then a proper ramp-up sequence for something like that would be, after you've done your general warm-up and your dynamic warm-up, you would move into the squat, you'd start with the empty bar. There you could do 15 to 20 reps because it's the empty bar, it's not very intense, right? That would be perfectly fine. But then after that, the reps need to taper down with each subsequent set, and the bar weight, the weight on the bar, needs to go up. So then maybe you would do 95 pounds for 8 reps, then maybe 135 for 5, 175 for 5, 195 for 3, then 215 maybe for 2 or maybe 3 reps. And then after that, you would start your working sets with 225 pounds. And this is ideal because it not only preps the nervous system by gradually increasing the weight on the bar so that the load on the bar never comes as a shock to the system, but it also preps the muscles and it preps the joints for the work that's coming. It grooves the movement pattern by allowing you to complete a decent number of progressively heavier sets to hone in on your technique as the bar gets heavier and as holding technique becomes more difficult. And it accomplishes all this while mitigating fatigue accumulation by leaving plenty of reps in reserve on each warm-up set, on each set that you did while you moved up the ramp. And so that way you still have a full gas tank when it comes time to start your real sets for the day. And your body is also fully prepared for the work that is to come. So the way that he describes this portion of the warm-up is not quite ideal. In my opinion, of course. Bitch. It's just too many reps per set. On a tough exercise like this, on a tough exercise like the squat, it's gonna gas you before you've even started doing the real work for the day, right? As well, without an accompanying example of how to properly and progressively ramp the load up with each warm-up set that you're doing, it's also kind of an incomplete picture that's being painted here. You know, just doing a bunch of sets of 15 to 20 reps with a random weight on the bar and then throwing your working weight onto it after that doesn't really accomplish anything besides accumulating a bunch of unnecessary fatigue before you've even started the workout. And remember, a warm-up is probably actually the most important part of the workout. There's no denying it. A proper warm-up makes or breaks the training session. It really dictates how well you'll perform that day, and if executed correctly, it can greatly enhance your average level of performance on a day-to-day basis, which in the long run is going to dramatically increase the gains that you're able to make.
For beginner leg days, I generally recommend structuring your workout into 4 parts. First up, intense compound movements such as squat or lunges. And then moving on to less intense compound movements such as the leg press, hack squat, or any supported compound movements. And then we move on to isolated movements such as the leg extension, hamstring curl, or quad contraction. And lastly, calves.
I like this breakdown, and it's good to see a popular bodybuilder placing the greatest emphasis here on compound free weight variations like the squat, man, and relegating the machine work and the isolated lower body work a little bit lower down the totem pole. There's nothing wrong with leg presses and hack squats and all that kind of things, but they should come after the free weight compound movements. And that's really basic stuff, but a lot of people in Noel's position throw basic advice and proper workout sequencing like this out the window. So it's nice to see him abiding by these tried and true training principles.
So since you're already warmed up on the squat, dive into the set. You're just starting out. Never sacrifice form over weight. Some guys go for 6 sets, whilst others aim for 4. In my opinion, this really does depend on your goals, but a good starting point is around 3 to 4 sets with 10 to 12 reps.
His squat advice here is pretty much good to go, in my opinion. As he notes, sets and reps and intensity are really going to vary depending on your goals and your experience level, as well as where you are in the training cycle. Personally, I've done singles, I've done doubles, I've done triples, I've done 5s, 10s, 15s, I've even done 20s, right? I've done zombie squats, I've done front squats, I've done pause squats, I've done back squats, I've done low bar squats, high bar squats, belt squats, freaking every kind of thing you can imagine. So it really just depends on what you're going for, how many reps you do, what kinds of variations you do, how heavy you're lifting, all that.
Arse to the grass. I'm sure you've heard that term before, but I recommend at the lower point of the movement, try and keep your legs perpendicular to the floor.
As far as squat depth goes, I do typically recommend that most people strive to achieve an efficient squat pattern that's right about to powerlifting depth, right? So just below parallel, having the hip joint reach a point that's just below the top of the knee. And you'll get all the benefits of squatting by going to that depth, right? The only thing that you'll really miss out on if you're cutting it there is the potential hip mobility enhancement that can be had by squatting all the way down to an ass to grass position. But most people are incapable of executing that correctly anyway, so it's not something that I tend to emphasize.
As a bodybuilder, it's good to keep the tension applied to your muscles for as long as possible. Throughout your sets, going too low can take the tension off of your muscle. As when your ass touches the floor, you might find yourself in a rested position.
Now, I wouldn't worry too much about the concept of constant tension though. I don't believe that one should be dive bombing their squats all the way or trying to get a crazy bounce out of the bottom of the squat off the tendinous structures and whatnot. But I also don't think that beginner lifters need to worry about muscular tension at all when they are squatting. If they want to be bodybuilders, if hypertrophy is their only goal, they can worry about that kind of thing when they're doing their lunges or their leg extensions or their hack squats or leg presses or belt squats or almost any other exercise, really. But with the squat, with the free weight squat, you should be focusing just mostly on executing with crisp and efficient movement patterns and simply owning the weight on every single rep that you do.
Now we have lunges. I choose walking lunges because of the concept we just talked about earlier, and that is keeping the tension applied to the muscle. Starting out, I recommend using no weights at first and gradually add weight as you get more stable doing the movement. What I like to do is superset my squat with some walking lunges. However, it can be intense, so gradually work your way up.
His lunge advice by itself is also very solid. However, I would not recommend supersetting your squats with your lunges, as that's actually going to drastically detract from how well that you can perform on the squat. And here's the theory. I'll give you guys the theory that I'm operating under here when I make this video, when I give out this advice, and when I think of a beginner natural trainee, right? You're gonna build the biggest pair of legs by building a pair of strong legs first and focusing on progressive intensity with your squatting as you do so. So your focus here, it should be on becoming a better squatter, first and foremost, an efficient squatter. That's how I built my quads, just by squatting. I didn't even have access to commercial gym equipment for a lot of my training career. And I'm not saying that you need to max out here, right? Because you never need to max out on anything if you don't want to. What I am saying is you need to get your reps up. So for example, if you take your 5x5 squat, let's say it's 225 pounds right now, and you increase your 5x5 squat to 315 pounds. And guess what? Your legs are going to get a lot bigger and a hell of a lot stronger in the process. And then by having that base of strength and that base of muscle that you've now built, you have that to lean on all the time in the future. So any leg work that you do in the future now is going to be a much more potent stimulus overall. So my advice is to just leave the squat alone, right? When you're squatting, just squat and then move on to the other exercises for the day after that. But when you pair it with other stuff like this, in my opinion, all you do is detract from the squat work and hinder that process.
Let's move on to less intensive, supported compound movements. I generally like recommending leg press to beginners because it's a very comfortable and supported leg exercise. When doing this exercise and you want to work more hamstring and glute, push with the heel of your foot. And on the contrast, if you want to work more of your quads, push with the ball of your foot. At this point of the workout, I generally like to throw in some more high volume. So go for around 15 to 20 reps. If you want to, maybe throw in a drop set.
Thumbs up for Big Daddy here. This is all good advice for this segment of the workout.
You cannot deny the need for a big, juicy dumpy. So we have this really suggestive exercise known as the hip thruster. For a beginner, I generally recommend an easier way, and that is doing it on the hamstring curl. As mentioned before, when you're in the exercise, try a drive with your heel. This will help apply more tension to the glutes. Another thing you can try is pause and hold on the contraction.
Agreed here as well. I actually have an entire video telling you guys why you should be hip thrusting. So I definitely agree with what he's saying here wholeheartedly. This exercise doesn't just build big, strong glutes, right? It also improves overall hip function. So if you aren't doing it already, you should start now.
Now we have isolated movements. A lot of guys struggle with making the mind-muscle connection with their hamstring. What I like to suggest is a pause on contraction with a nice slow negative. Taking it slower really does help you find that contraction. Another thing that I really like is you do 5 of those pause and contractions followed by 10 or 15 pump out reps.
The advice that he gives for leg curls is good. It's quite similar to what I like to do with my clients. I focus on squeezing the hamstrings as hard as possible for a 1 to 2 count in the fully contracted position. And then from there, emphasize the negative portion on the way down. And since the hamstrings are one of the muscle groups that are most benefited by having great eccentric strength, another good way to further emphasize the eccentric phase here is to perform what's known as 2-1 leg curls. So for that, you would lift the weight using both legs, and then you would lower it using just one leg at a time. And this works because we're actually something like 20 to 30% stronger during eccentric muscle action as compared to concentric muscle action. So you can still get your hammies a good workout concentrically by lifting the weight with both of them and then using a weight that one of them can handle eccentrically. And so building this kind of massive eccentric hamstring strength is a great way to ensure that you don't tweak a hamstring in the weight room or while running or sprinting or anything like that. So overall, I really like Noel's advice here in this video. You know, there are a couple points that we disagree on. That's kind of inevitable because a lot of that is going to be based on what our fundamentals are. You know, we come from completely different ideologies and different schools of thought, and my training experiences and my training goals are vastly different from his as well. And so our respective knowledge bases were formed on completely different platforms, which means there are always going to be minor disagreements here and there, right? But that said, I think there's a lot more here that we agree on, that I agree with, and that I think is overall good advice than what I disagree with or than what I think is poor advice. And so that's actually really nice to see because there is a lot of trash out there. There's a lot of fitness garbage that's published on YouTube every single day, man. So it's refreshing for me to see that the next uber popular guy who's coming up onto the scene right now has overall solid leg training advice, because leg training is my baby. But his warm-up advice is solid overall. He emphasizes the compound movements first and foremost, like squats, the king of all exercises. His workout sequencing is on point, which is very important, and he doesn't let you neglect important muscles of the posterior chain like the hammies and the glutes. So that's all good stuff, man. Good work, Noel. It was a good video. I enjoyed reviewing it, and I hope that you guys enjoyed my review. And most importantly of all, I hope that you were able to take something useful away from it to use in your your own training. If you did enjoy the video, please remember to smash the like button before you go. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and definitely leave me some love in the comments down below. Check out www.enkirielitefitness.com for online coaching and training programs, and that's a wrap. Keep training hard, and I will catch you guys next time.